Hello there, this is the final video of the week, and this is a defence of David Lynch's Dune. Now look at this nice little steelbook I got from Germany. Now, I wrote a steelbook out which didn't have the documentary on it, which is why I bought the German version instead, which has a documentary, The Making of Dune. You miss out on a commentary or two, but you get the documentary instead, and honestly I'd much rather a documentary, and I like the steelbook a lot better than the arrow designs and other stuff. You get a lot of production designs in the disc too. You get like the film on 4K and Blu-ray and the extra disc, and it's beautiful. So if you haven't bought Dune 4K yet, you want to do it, I'd recommend the German disc, as better version. But they're both the same transfer. They're both working with the same exact transfer that was done for the 4K. It's also transfers available on iTunes. So, but the reason I'm doing this, I've actually done a video on Dune where I had it with Flash Gordon, which were two Dino De Laurentiis films from a certain time period. But I thought, since the new Dune's coming out and everyone's trashing David Lynch's Dune, including David Lynch, to be honest, I thought it'd be good to talk about the original Dune and defend it a little bit, even though it's a mess. I mean, there's no way around it. It's a mess. It was cut to hell. The final third of the film is basically what the next 2 hours, or 2 hours plus the Villeneuve version will be. They had 40 minutes, including credits, to do that. So it wasn't going to work. It really wasn't going to work. And it just had that kind of messy quality in the final third, as it just fast forwarded through so many story beats and so many character beats. But I managed to watch it for the first time projected with a 4K master, so even though I've only got a 1080p projector, you still got very good quality. And so I managed to see or rewatch a lot of the things I liked about Dune. Why I preferred the Lynch Dune to the Villeneuve Dune, ultimately. Even though the Lynch Dune is a complete mess. But it's more emotional. It actually feels like a personal vision that has been trampled upon. But there's so much there that's beautiful. And there's so much there that's eccentric. It's stuff that Lynch would do in the future as well. This is definitely a David Lynch film. No matter how painful the process was for him, and no matter how diluted his vision got for the film, because there's stuff that was diluted. There's things that were thrown in there that aren't David Lynch. There's way more action in this film than Lynch would ever do in the future, and I think some of that is why it's diluted. I think they threw in action units and did some action shots, and whenever you see an army of action, it's a lot more cluttered than the rest of the film, and it pulls you out a lot more, and you're feeling Lynch wasn't going to do that. That wasn't what he was about. So there's things like that where the camera suddenly moves a lot more, and I don't think it's photographed as well as some of the other sequences. So I think there is a element there that is definitely diluting it. But despite all its flaws, this one actually does have an emotional narrative base. It's got a universe that actually kind of connects into each other really well, even though you've got some special effects that haven't aged well. But to me, it feels a lot more cohesive as a universe than the Villeneuve version, which felt like it was 20 years in the future, really, for its technology, or 50 years in the future. It did not feel like it was thousands of years ahead. And it didn't have that used future element Lynch had. Lynch had a future that was both used and alien to us. They have the Space Guild navigators, which are tied to the sandworms, which are tied to the space, that really shows the mutation of humanity and the mutation of the human soul into something else. It's got a sense of it being a universe where it spreads everywhere, which I don't think the Villeneuve version got. The Villeneuve version didn't even have the Guild Navigators or the Emperor, which are very important. I think I complained in my review of that one. The space thing didn't really come across as much as it should have, because you never knew what they're fighting for. And this one, you know what they're fighting for. It's established straight away repeatedly, probably too many times, because this film, one thing problem it does have is exposition, because it explains stuff again. It's almost like they had a test screen and it was like, they still don't understand it, let's do it again. And it creates this sense of like, you can told stuff too many times, which I'm sure Lynch was not happy with. That's not another reason why Lynch isn't keen in this film. There's re-explanations of stuff that probably were done for, like, just in case, and then some that were in the film. Which meant that sometimes you'd have stuff that probably should have been in the film, not in the film. That's a big problem. But the good thing, though, is in this one you get a sense of what Paul actually is. He is the mutation, it's really brought forward, he is the mutation of all this social engineering. He's the end effect of something that they've been trying to do for a while, which is create this super being. And the idea of space and folding space and folding all these other things, and all the human beings are mutated slightly. The Hakoans are mutated into these like ginger freaks who are just perverts. The Freemen and Arrakis are all, in this one they're European based rather than African based, like in the Villeneuve version. This one they're European based. Like, you've a lot of European actors or Mexican actors in here that are look a lot more European than the Villeneuve version. But it's the idea that their eyes have gone blue, and you've got these mentats that are social engineered, and you've got all these other guys that are social engineered to be loyal. Like, in their soul they can't really be disloyal. And there's a sense of this world there's a background to it all. There's a sense of everything's been worked out, like how the design's been worked out, everything has a place, and it's a world that has rotten to the core. It's like, you've got all these plots going on, but there's also a sense of, it's a society that's going wrong. Society needs to re-establish itself. It has to get rid of some old ideals. The way that we feel probably about the Victorian age, where it was something that kind of congested into the modern age, and it was like, it needed something new, and it was also the empire had to be destroyed. This is that feeling here. Like, people have too much power for so long, and they become corrupt, and they become something that needs to go. And that's palpable in this version. That's something Dune does really well. This version is this sense of this power structure that's so complicated that no one can get near it, and it really needs to go. And they've killed navigators, which are amazing alien technology design, which these mutated creatures resemble the worms, and they are the ones who are giving orders for how the universe folds. And you've got the Bene Gesserit nuns, who are also this other power structure, who are these women who have got all these mental telepathy things going on. They've developed themselves in very dangerous ways. We just sense this world that actually has just really mutated in ways that people were probably hopeful for at some point, and they become just power structures of people just trying to keep hold of the power. They're trying to manipulate everything to their own ends. And that just comes through the whole film. Like, the Emperor's corrupt. Played by Joseph Ferrer, he's corrupt. Funny enough, his son, Miguel Ferrer, would be a Lynch regular in Twin Peaks. You know, and would basically be David Lynch's partner in Twin Peaks a lot of the time. See, family history, there's a lot of Twin Peaks things going on here. But there's also this sense of something that would go through Lynch's film, is this world that's actually all interconnected. I mean, the Dune world does feel like it could be just another universe just off aside from Twin Peaks. It could be, the dimension they're talking about could be the Dune universe, you know, with the Guild Navigators. It does feel like, even though it's based on Frank Herbert's story, it all feels connected to all the other David Lynch stuff. It just has been smashed up into pieces. They've even killed McLachlan here, really. Who's actually much better as he goes on, and you sense that the film, he's a terrible haircut. That's his big problem. His haircut's terrible. There's no doubt about that. But he's playing a guy who's very internal. And one of the complaints I had about the Villeneuve Dune was the character was so internal we didn't know him. And that's when he got the points across a lot more. The music was much more tied into the melodrama of Paul, this guy who has to, the sleeper must awaken. The whole psychologist, he's trying to work out what's going on. He's a thinker. He's trying to work it out. He's like, okay, this is going here, this is going here, this is manipulation, is going all over the place. How do I get through this? And he's trying not to overreact to stuff. And as things go wrong, he reacts in a cold fashion that really disturbs him because he thinks he should be much more emotional, but he's not. And the whole idea is he has been genetically trained to be something greater than humanity. And it even disturbs him because he thinks it's not a good idea. And there's this kind of disconnect of what his fate is and what he is, which is quite interesting. So there's a lot of really cool stuff going on, and there's a lot of things where water's morphing into moons and things like that are pure Lynch, and it just sets you an idea of what's the inner world of this character, and how's his inner world connecting to the worlds of other people, the worlds of the universe he has to deal with. All of that's interconnected in really interesting ways in this film, because it's David Lynch doing it, and he knows how to do all that thing. And the idea of making it personal to you, even if the universe is cold and impersonal. Sort of a metaphor for the production of this film. And the whole film just is this kind of very personal feel. It feels like a film that was Lynch wanted to make, that was then pulled out of his hands, which is pretty much facts. But I think even before we went into production, he was starting to feel it. But because it was starting to get pulled away from him. But there's so much Lynch here, though. We actually rewatch it, looking at what he did with Inland Empire and Mulholland Drive and stuff. He's all over this, you know, the sense of duality that's always flowing through his work, the sense of one person not always being the same person as they appear to be, you know. I mean, Kevin MacLachlan is almost his face for the world. Like, he's the actor who seems to get Lynch most in lots of ways, or as a representation of him, even though other actors have worked with him as well. Really starts here, and it actually looks a lot better now when you've seen the rest of the work. I think when before it looked a bit stiff, but when you see the rest of Lynch's work, you know, with MacLachlan, it actually does feel connected to Agent Cooper and his kind of repression, and Jeffrey Bowman, his repression. There is a kind of real connection there, even though it's messy in this film. It is genuinely messy. I mean, the last third, you feel that you're getting, especially in the projector, you feel like you're getting hammered with plot. It's like, whoa, because the first half actually takes its time. There's lots of awkward things going on, but you're getting the general story. Then suddenly, as soon as he's in the run from everybody, he turns it around in about 20 minutes, which is very unsatisfying. You just feel you're getting thrown stuff in. And also, he has to do all this stuff, like his mother drinks this thing. He has to drink this other stuff to get command of the worms. It's like one after another. It's like, whoa, it feels like I'm having a schizophrenic episode here. You know, there's that kind of problem. And Lynch is trying to solve it by having all these images building over time, like how Paul originally saw the world, how it's evolving him through time. He's putting the points on the sleeper must awaken, and what's the links between the water and the worms and everything else. And he's doing his best to keep it going. And there's lots of wonderful sequences in here. And the atmosphere that Freddie Francis created with the photography, and Anthony Master did some really great production design. There's lots of great stuff going on here. And everything's built into this world that really makes sense, but it's getting rushed so badly. And there's this wonderful interior thing of hearing people's thoughts. But as Lynch said in the interview, that was an idea he had. And I think it really works a lot of time in the film, but it's too much of it, and because sometimes it has to add plot, and he says he sits a rap when that starts to happen. And you do, because it's a sense of, this is really interesting, it gives you a real connection to the characters, and then suddenly it feels awkward, it's chucked in. And it's really odd. But you're getting lots of moments of flash into parts of the story that's not developed in the second half, that he says, that looks like it should be something much bigger. It looks like there's a lot more shot there that we would have used. So you even know there's great sequences as he takes the water of life and starts to experience the universe in a different way. All that stuff's great, but then you suddenly jump into an action scene, and it's like, I needed a minute or two to process that. Or maybe 20 minutes to process it. Instead you've got like 30 seconds. And there's that feeling of overdrive through the second half of the film that just makes you think you're having a trip. And a bad trip at that, because it doesn't all make sense. But yet, despite all of this, I still adore David Lynch's Dune. No matter how weird it gets, no matter how eccentric it gets, there is an interior pulse to it that actually makes some sort of sense. you do sense there's a film there that actually was interesting. And there was an approach that was interesting that was just getting butchered throughout. I mean, there's a reason why David Lynch did not talk about Dune. You know, it was a horrible experience for him. But it's still a fascinating film. It's a film only an auteur could make. Like, no matter how disastrous some of the decisions made by other people that forced on him were, he had such a clear idea of what he wanted to do in the first place that it just comes through no matter the mess. It's just one of those things, only a genius could be maybe this bad type of thing. Like, I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's a very, very flawed movie. But it's wonderfully flawed. It's only a eccentric genius could put all this stuff in there that means no matter how much they took out, there's still so much weirdness there that you can never take it all out. It's just everywhere. Even when you're doing action scenes, there's stuff going on there which doesn't make sense, but it was wonderful. I mean, characters jump from one place to the other without explanation. I mean, a character's built up the Beast for Ban and suddenly he's dead. At the end, it's like, well, we hardly knew you. You were great in the build up and then suddenly you're dead. What? There's lots of stuff like that that's wonderful and weird and almost psychedelic and strange. But it's still a personal, weird film that I adore, no matter how crazy it is. And it is crazy. There's still great moments. Like there's a point where Paul's starting to, after all the problems, suddenly the sleeper has awoken. And it's a great emotional sequence. There's moments where he controls the worms, and the music really connects, and it really works. And then it jumps awkwardly to something else. But there's all these moments that really works. It's obviously Lynch has built them up, and then they've been cut to shreds later on. But the actual intent of Lynch is still there, even though the context makes you feel you're having a psychotic episode. But the craftsmanship of Lynch is always there, even though it's getting butchered. Even though you're thinking you're having a fit sometimes watching the film. And even though the ending is literally, let's have an ending and do it in 10 minutes, when it should have been like a 40-50 minute sequence. You know, you still have that. But there's still a genius there, even though it's a genius that is being frustrated and destroyed by, you know, crazy producers. So that's my defence of Dune. I hope you can take it as you want. I'm not encouraging you to rewatch or anything. I'm just saying this is my take on why Dune, the David Lynch Dune, still has a really important place. And why I still like it more than the Villeneuve version, because I just think there's still an emotional feeling to it for me that the Villeneuve version missed. So this is almost like a companion piece to the Villeneuve review. So there you go. Hope you enjoy it. I'll be back next week with some more videos. But that's me for now.